Hello there folks, I do hope you're all well. Okay, look, we're all still reeling from the sad passing a week ago, was it? Yesterday we heard of it about Steve Wright there. And I heard something yesterday on YouTube, which many of you may not have heard. It had only been watched by about 900 people, which surprised me. GAMBO was one of the first ones that spoke out in, what would the word be? Sadness about Steve's untimely passing last week. I think they had him on this morning, so if I remember rightly, and he said a few things. He actually said at the time that he'd been in contact with Steve a day or so before he died, and they were hoping to meet, I think, the day after Steve died, and to that end, he'd emailed him. And he really left it at that. He didn't say much more. But I think GAMBO I think it's a Sunday night show that he has now on Radio 2. I think when he got moved from Pick Up the Pops, and obviously Steve took his chair, there was obviously no animosity there. They obviously both got on very, very well. Been with the broadcaster for many a year now, the both of them. GAMBO, as I say, got his own show there. Steve took over from GAMBO on Pick Up the Pops. And GAMBO was very, very sad and fulsome in his praise last week on This Morning. I think he was followed by Noel Edmonds, who I'm not a lover of, to be honest with you, but he said some great things as well. Anyway, GAMBO fleshed it out more, I think, on his Sunday night show. It was on YouTube yesterday, but it had only been watched by about 900 people. I heard it, and I thought, well, I'll have to share it in case you've not heard it. I thought it was really, really, I think touching's the word. Yeah, I think probably touching. Anyway, he said, Radio 2 were looking at starting off another station, a Radio 2 that I've read since was going to be probably digital only. And to that end, a couple of DJs had been approached, and the DJs were GAMBO himself and Steve Wright. And as far as they knew, no one else had been approached for the station, and nobody knew much about it. They didn't know much themselves about it. And GAMBO said we'd spoken about it a couple of times and we didn't know what was what. And to that end, he said, I got a message off Steve saying, well, when does it start? What's it called? Is there only us that's been spoken to about it? How many days a week will they want us for? What will we get paid? He said all questions that we didn't know answers to. And he said, GAMBO said, well, I was actually speaking to some bigwigs at Radio 2, I think he said last Monday. He said, so what I'll do, Steve, I'll speak to them. I've got a meeting with them. I think they said we're going to do a Zoom call and then we're going to meet up later. But I may have that wrong, but that's irrelevant, really. He said, anyway, I'll keep you informed. He said, anyway, on the Monday morning, he said, I sent an email to Steve saying, right, I've heard nothing yet, but as I say, I've got that meeting later. He said, I think he said it was at about 4 p.m. As soon as I come out of it, I'll message it again. Anyway, he said, he tried to speak to somebody at Radio 2 about something, he said, and nobody got back to him, which was strange. He said, anyway, then 4 o'clock was approaching, and he got a message of somebody saying that the meeting had been cancelled. But nobody gave him any reason why and thought it was strange. So he said, I actually sent another email to Steve to say, look, I don't know if I'm going to have any answers for you today because I can't get hold of anybody. Nobody seems to be speaking. He said, and it was strange. He said, and I tried to make, during the course of the day, 3 different contacts with people at Radio 2. And in each instance, I kept getting knocked back, but I was never given reasons why. Anyway, it turns out, when I sent the first message in the morning about questions I wanted to ask later that day, Steve had already died. He said, so then I sent a second one, and obviously still the same. He said, anyway, as I sent the third one, he said, I got a phone call out of the blue. I think he said it was about 4 o'clock, 10 past 4. Somebody said to me, look, nobody's been in touch because it's everything's upside down here. Steve passed away early on this morning. He said, well, came as a bolt out of the blue to me, because, you know, and I didn't know. Nobody had told me. He said, yeah, he said, we've kept a hat on it and we are doing for about the next hour. But in about an hour's time, we're going to announce it and it's probably going to go ballistic, so be ready for questions. He said, oh, I thought, right, okay. He said, and I'm thinking, so I'm all in the world thinking, well, I can't believe he's gone. You know, he's of no age, relatively speaking. His health hadn't been absolutely brilliant, but I didn't know he'd been unwell. I didn't see it coming, none of us did. He said, and I spoke to my partner, and my partner says, you're going to have a day, you're just going to go berserk soon. He said, and to that, and my partner suggested, he said, look, let's do something on Instagram so you can put something out there with your early thoughts, but obviously we won't put them out there till it's been formally announced. He said, and we did that. He said, and I'm glad we did. He said, but as it turns out, I think he said 3 million watches already. He said, but I knew then that the various media outlets had been onto me. He said, and there was, and for 24 hours, he said, I couldn't cope with it. He said, and 24 hours just went in a blur. He said, all I did was speak to people about Steve Wright, eat and sleep, nothing else. He said, my day just went. He said, and it really took me till now to sort of get to some kind of normality. Not that things are normal, and not that I can process the fact that he's gone, because I can't believe it. He said, but he said the big thing about this story, he said, I messaged him on I think it was the Monday Steve died, on 2 and 3 occasions, and on each occasion, the reason I can't get hold of him, the reason I can't get any answers, the reason nobody's coming back to me, is because Steve's actually dead, he said, which is, it's awful to think. I'm trying to message him about the future, and for poor old Steve, there's no future. And I thought it was really poignant and really, really, really sad. And then, as I say, we hear, yesterday I did it in one of my messages, you may not have heard this, that a good friend of his is saying that the Beeb approached Steve not long before he died to take up his old show. Now maybe there's a wire crossed here, because maybe they meant to take up his old show on the digital network. Maybe they was going to run his show as was, on Radio 2 as was, and then get a digital version, and maybe Steve was going to present 5 days a week. That probably was going to be the way. I'll tell you now, it's a pity for the people that produce digital wirelesses and whatever else, because I'll tell you now, many have got digital, but there's hundreds and thousands and millions that haven't. They'd have been buying digital radios in the droves. I mean, like is it, what's it called? Is it Greatest Hits? The viewership or the listenership must have gone up massively since Ken Bruce went over there. I think this would have done the same for digital. And if they were going to run it side by side with, is it Scott Mills that's got his old show? I think it is. I'm not that well up on him, but if it is, I'll tell you what, he lost some viewers, or the show lost viewers when Steve got bulleted. They'd have lost a hell of a lot more now. You know, if he'd have took over a show, even had it been on digital, people wouldn't have been listening to Scott Mills. They'd have all gone over to our Steve. There's no danger on that score. But sadly, it's not to be, and just sad, really. But the thing is, as I said in one of yesterday's messages, why bullet him to start with? I know he's 69. One of the channel watchers yesterday said, well, as you get older, your illnesses hit. And I know they do. I know our mind isn't as good in our late 60s as it is in our 50s, 40s and 30s. But you listen to Steve on Pick of the Pops weekend before last, he's sharp as a tack. Absolutely sharp as a tack. Radio shouldn't be something that's ageist, because people don't see your face. Doesn't matter how old you look, or in Steve's case at the moment, how overweight you look, because nobody sees it. They listen to that, and we listen with ease. And if we like what's coming out of here, we'll keep listening. And we were doing. And I'm one of them, like many of you that look at this channel, that doesn't listen to Radio 2 Monday to Friday afternoon anymore, because Steve isn't on there. We don't listen because his replacement isn't good enough. We also don't listen because we think he's been outdone to, and he was. Why get rid of him to start with? And then 2 years later look for another vehicle for him? Why get rid of him when the ratings were so high? Why on earth do these stations, these corporations just exist for ticking boxes? Because that's what it's all about. Age, colour of skin, sexual preferences. It's just crazy. It's crazy. I grew up in a day where it was all about best in class. You had the best you could get fronted each show, be it on TV or radio. None of the rest mattered. If they were the best, you wouldn't look to replace them because you already had the best. A la Steve Wright, Ken Bruce, Paul O'Grady, and others. Absolute crazy. Can anybody tell me any of those 3 shows by those 3 broadcasters have gotten better since they either left or were ousted? I can't see one. I really, really can't. Anyway, just thought I'd share that if you've not heard it. You'll find it on YouTube, and it's Paul Gambaccini. It looks like it's 2 hours long. They must be doing his whole show. But it's the first minute and a half, 2.5, 3.5 minutes of the show where he tells you the story. I'll have got bits of it wrong and, in the wrong order, but that's just, I've not wrote it down. I don't write anything down. But it's giving you a good idea of what he said anyway. But I thought it was very poignant and very, very sad. Very, very sad. To think his good friend's messaging him and he's no longer here. Yeah, he hasn't been told, because that's what these stations do, don't they? Keep their hat on it, doesn't it, until they're ready to release and to get maximum exposure, which is really what they did. I'll never now forget putting the news on that night on BBC. As soon as his picture came up, I thought, oh, no, he's gone. To start the programme with his picture, you just knew it was bad news. Anyway, that's it.